The International Criminal Court has asked for more evidence before it starts an investigation into claims of Uighur genocide by China. The international body has said that there is not enough evidence to warrant opening a full-scale investigation against China. The complaint was filed in July earlier this year on behalf of the East Turkestan government in exile and the East Turkestan National Awakening Movement. As Beijing reported, the complaint points out at the forced movement of the Uighur people in Tajikistan and Cambodia back to China. This is also what the complainant submitted as a proof against Beijing's atrocities towards its ethnic Muslim minority. According to reports, the requested evidence needs to address additional instances of the rounding up of Uighur people abroad and of Beijing forcing them back into China.
These are some of the boys relieved to be going home after the school raid in which many of their friends were taken hostage. They're leaving behind parents anxiously waiting for the return of their missing children. It's not clear how many children have been abducted from the all-boys boarding school. Nigerian police say they forced the gunmen to retreat after engaging them in a shootout for more than 1 hour. But there's anger that 6 years after more than 270 girls were kidnapped by the armed group Boko-Haram at Chibok, Nigerian security forces appear to have once again failed to keep school children safe.
More than 100 people were arrested as riot police and protesters scuffled in Paris on Saturday. They're angry about a proposed bill that could make it more difficult for witnesses to film police officers. It would make it illegal to publish images of officers with intent to cause them harm. Critics say it's vital to be able to hold the police to account by filming them whilst on duty. There are also fears that it could hurt press freedoms and make it more difficult for citizens to expose police brutality. Footage posted on social media last month showed police officers beating up a black man, triggering a national outcry.
These anti-government protests on the streets of Tehran 3 years ago were eventually quashed, but the regime accused journalist Ruhollah Zam of helping to whip up dissent on his website. He was arrested last year, reportedly lured away from France where he'd been living in exile. Zam faced trial behind closed doors in Tehran, with the regime claiming he was corrupt and against the government.
Ruhollah Zam
Iranian state television announced the execution to the nation, calling Zam the head of an anti-revolutionary website. His supporters say he was forced to make a confession.
Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates asked me to work with them against Iran's regime. They also offered me good money.
Meanwhile, the South American nation Peru has temporarily suspended the clinical trials of the Chinese COVID vaccine Sinopharm. This after Peru detected what it describes as neurological problems in one of its test volunteers. Now, according to local media, Peru's National Institute of Health interrupted the trials after a volunteer had difficulty moving his arms. The chief researcher, German Malaga, said, and I quote, "Several days ago we signalled, as we are required to, the regulatory authorities that one of our participants presented certain neurological symptoms which could correspond to a condition called Guillain-Barré syndrome." Now, Guillain-Barré syndrome is a rare and also a non-contagious disorder which affects the movement of the arms and legs. Now, Peru declared a temporary health emergency in 5 regions in the month of June following multiple cases.
South Korea reported 1,030 new COVID-19 cases on Sunday, surpassing the 1,000 mark for the first time. There was a sudden rise in cases even though 14,000 fewer tests were conducted on Saturday. Among those tested, more than 4% tested positive compared to 2.5% the day before. Of Sunday's cases, 1,002 were local and 28 were from overseas. A majority of 786 were in the Greater Capital Region, which includes Seoul, Gyeonggi-do Province, and Incheon. All of these areas have been breaking records day after day. In the capital, there have been large cluster infections at churches and nursing homes. And nationwide at restaurants, private academies, singing rooms, small gatherings, and military facilities.
Religious leaders are calling on the government and the public to hold corrupt officials accountable. They say in 2021, all suspects found guilty of corruption and fraud should face jail time. Some government officials have been implicated in multiple cases of corruption.
One sometimes wishes that COVID-19 could go away, and now we're in the second wave, and which is very, very painful. And strategies are needed to deal with the second wave. And I hope that when we deal with those strategies, we won't have again the emergence of people that put their hands in the till and steal the poor people's money. And it is really, really, really a betrayal of the people's trusts to steal COVID money. And those that are implicated, indeed, as I said yesterday, need to face the consequences of their deeds.
Son como 4 o 5.
Tourists have ignored danger signs, scaling fences to capture the perfect photo a day after a Craigieburn woman plunged to her death from a cliff in the Grampians in front of her family. The actions have been slammed by tour operators and the police minister. Crime reporter Lana Murphy.
Living on the edge and dicing with death. This is a daily occurrence at the Grampians Baroka Lookout. Tourists scale fence to pose on a picture-perfect rock perched hundreds of metres above Hall's Gap. Yesterday, it cost a loving mother her life. The 38-year-old Craigieburn woman tripped over the edge, plummeting more than 80 metres down a cliff face in front of her husband and child. 30 minutes before the tragedy, tour guide Graham Wood warned his customers.
This happens all the time, and one of these days someone's going to fall off.
At 3 p.m, his prediction was realised. Witnesses could hear the woman's screams but were powerless to help.
Far-right protesters and counter-protesters fought in downtown Washington on Saturday night, with local media reporting at least 4 people stabbed. The clashes took place amid Stop the Steal protests across the country, in which conservative groups claim, without evidence, that the November 3rd election was stolen from President Donald Trump. In Washington, around 200 members of the Proud Boys, a violent far-right group, joined marches earlier near the Trump Hotel and were met by counter-protesters, including from the aggressive far-left anti-fascism movement Antifa. Police moved quickly to separate both groups, using pepper spray on both sides, according to witnesses.